Hi folks, thanks so much for joining me today. We're going to look at how to set up a file in MLA format. I'll specifically be using Google Docs in Chrome on a Dell laptop, so the commands or shortcuts on your computer might be different. Feel free to leave your questions down in the comments and let me know what you think in the comments, or just leave a comment to say hello, but leave a comment, please. Okay, let's get started. So here on Chrome, when I open up a new document, the default settings, it gives you a default of 1-inch margins, which is what you're going to want for MLA formatting. And it's set to Arial at 11. So current MLA is MLA 9, and it says choose an easily readable typeface. And it gives the example of Times New Roman. It doesn't specify, but you can set it in which there's a difference between regular and italic, and set it to anywhere between 11 and 13 points, unless your instructor specifies a different font size. Obviously, if your instructor says something that contradicts MLA style, if it's for an assignment for that instructor, go with what the instructor says. So, since the Modern Language Association has just produced MLA 9, you may want to, if it's shortly after this video comes up, if it's fall semester of 2021, you may want to double check with your instructors to make sure that they want, do they want you to use MLA 8, which they may be more familiar with, or do they want to go ahead with MLA 9? What are their expectations for font, typeface, those sorts of things? Hopefully it'll be spelled out for you in the instructions. But it's always a good idea to clarify. So I usually tend to start off by setting up the first 4 lines for the heading. And then once I actually have something that I can see, I will change the font and the spacing and things like that. So the first line is the student name, and I generally use Susan Smith for my example student name. And then I go down, and the next line is the instructor name. I don't know, Frederickson? Sounds good. And then the next line is for the name of the course. So let's imagine English 11 at 1. So this is college paper. We're going to be really fancy here. And then the next line is the due date for the assignment, which is formatting using number of the day and then the name of the month and then the 4-digit year. So 21 September 2021. The next line is going to be the assignment title. So let's think of something clever. Okay, so I'm going to call this To the Moon and Back. Maybe it is some sort of analysis of the way the relationships between parents and children in, I don't know, some novel. Well, I just read Pride and Prejudice over the last several months, so we'll use that. So I'm going to start my first paragraph, and I'm going to indent with a tab, which is automatically set to 1/2 inch. So that's what we want. So I'll leave it there. But if you notice, like if you on your ruler can tell, I've got a ruler on my taskbar. If it shows that it's not 1/2 inch, you may need to reset your tabs. We can talk about that later. So the bond between parents and their children is complex. In Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, we see several examples of different types of relationships between parents and children. And then I would go from there. But essentially, I have 2 full lines and a little bit more, which is going to allow me to see what it's going to look like as a paragraph. So then I'm going to use Control A to select all. You can also use, go to the Edit menu on Google Docs, and you can choose Select All that way. If you're on a Mac, pretty much anything that I do with Control is going to use the Command key instead of Control. So select all, and then I'm going to go to double spacing first. Why? I don't know. That's what occurred to me. Under the format menu, you can go to line spacing and then choose double. Also on Google Docs, you have a line spacing indicator, which looks like this. It is 3 little lines with, to the left, there's an arrow that goes up and down. So you can click that and you'll get a pop-up that'll allow you to choose the line spacing. So I'm going to change that to double. You want to make sure that you do not double return anywhere in the document. There should be no blank lines in your document. So I'm next going to select the title, click and drag. You can also, I believe, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, if you triple click, that'll select the entire paragraph. So my title is 1 paragraph because I pressed return after that. So, and then I'm going to use center align. You can use this button, which if you hover over it shows center aligned, and you can see how they're not flush left or flush right. You can also go to the format menu, choose align and indent, and there it tells you center. So on the menu, it actually gives you the word, which is helpful. On the button, you have to hover over to get the explanation. All right, so I have my double spacing set up, and I have my 4 lines for my heading, my title, my first paragraph, begun. I would probably want to, that's not really a strong thesis there, because I haven't, presumably I'm going to analyze those different types of relationships, and I should come up with some kind of what I think this means about, what I'm trying to say. Right so far, I've just said that there's several. That's not very helpful. All right, so then I'm going to select all again, and I'm going to choose I'm going to go ahead and choose Times New Roman, which, hey, look, it's right up at the top because mine is recently used. But if you go down, they are listed in alphabetical order. So Times New Roman is going to be down towards the bottom of those if it's not in your recently used typefaces. So click on Times New Roman, and I'm going to choose 12 by pressing the plus there since it's still selected. And again, 11 to 13 is current for MLA 9. So again, check with your instructor. And then up at the top of the page, I'm going to click so that I don't have everything selected. And then I'm going to double tap or double click up at the very top of the page to open the header. And I'm going to have page numbers. And it should look like this. You have a gray bar that says header, and it tells you you're in the header. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to the insert menu and choose insert page numbers. And unless your instructor says otherwise, you are going to choose the option that has the first page being page 1 up in the upper right-hand corner. And I'm going to click on that. And it puts it, ironically, up in the upper left. Now what I can do is Control-A to select everything, and then I can go over to my buttons for alignment, or again to the formatting menu. But since I've got the buttons, I'm going to just tap right align, and that moves it over. And then I'm going to click in front of the page number, and I'm going to type in the student's last name, which I made up as Smith, and then a space, so that it's not smooshed all together. So it should look like that. Now, the key here is that I've chosen insert page number. I didn't just type 1, because whatever you put in the header is going to show up on every single page. So if I type in Smith space 1 on page 2, it's going to say Smith space 1. On page 3, it's going to say Smith space 1. Don't want to do that. We also do not want to click on different first page. We just want to leave that and have it start off, because otherwise it'll say Smith 1, and then the second page will start. Different first page is the one that gives you can use a blank first page if you are supposed to have a title page. The title page would not be numbered, but the title page is actually on the first page of our document. So up in the header, we have our student last name and the page number. And we do not want to click where it says different first page. But if you notice, it's still set to the default typeface, which is Arial 11. And MLA 9 gives you more flexibility, but it is supposed to still be consistent. So since I set the text of the rest of the essay in Times New Roman 12, I need to change this to likewise be Times New Roman 12. And you can see this, you can see the difference in the font, especially between Arial and Times New Roman, because the letters, the characters have what are called feet on them, especially down at the bottom, you can see them. And so like the number 1, when I have it, I'm going to change it back to Arial here for just a minute. Where's Arial? There's Arial. you can see that the one looks different between Smith 1 and 2021 here. Notice that on the fourth line, 2021, the one has little feet. And then up here in my header, the one does not have those little feet. You can also see the feet on the S in September and Susan and Smith, and that's one of the reasons I use that. But up in the header, the S's, the start and end of the S doesn't have those little feet on them. So some letters have them and others it's harder to tell. Zooming in is going to make it easier. So I'm going to select all, and I have to be up in the header, make sure that's selected, and I can change it back to Times New Roman and 12. So you can see the difference there. One of the other reasons I chose To the Moon and Back as the title was so that you could see the capitalization there. You want to make sure that you're following standard title capitalization rules. So the first word is always capitalized. And after that, you capitalize all words except for, and here it helps to know your parts of speech, coordinating conjunctions, which are your fanboys, for and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Articles, a, and the, so I have the. So I've got the here, and I've got and. Both of those should be lowercase, unless they're the first word in the title. And then the other type of word that is not capitalized are prepositions. And so the word to here would be lowercase if it was not the first word in the title. First word in the title is always capitalized. So we're not going to format the title in any other way. You don't put it in bold, you don't underline it, you don't put it in quotation marks, you don't put it in italics, none of that while it's actually the title of your work. Now, I do have a reference to a title in my first paragraph here already in my second sentence, so I'm going to highlight that. Because this is the title of a major work, a long-form work, a novel is considered a long-form work, I am going to italicize that. So up here, I have the button. It's the I that looks like it's a little leaning forward or leaning sideways. And if you hover over it, it says italic. It also says Control I. On a Mac, it would be Command I. It'll italicize it. But I can also go to Edit. I go to Format and Text, and it's also there. So I can find it in a number of different places. There's a button, there's a keyboard shortcut, and I can also get to it through the Format menu. So I'm on the Format menu, I'm going to click it, and there. That makes it look a little bit different. So in Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, the title is just Pride and Prejudice. So you want to be careful about titles, making sure that it is the title of the text that you're referencing. So I italicize the title of a long-form work here in the text of my essay, but I don't italicize my title of my essay. So we've gone over margins, font, the heading, the running head, and page number. Running head is just it's what goes up in the header. And we are not going to worry about works cited in this video. It's going to get its own video. And then I will also talk about subheadings, tables, and other additions. Some other things that the Modern Language Association talks about, paper and printing, use 8.5 by 11 inch paper. It says use a high quality printer. That's somewhat subjective. Check with your instructor about whether your printout should be single-sided or double-sided. They allow for both, but again, that comes down to your instructor's preference. Proofread and correct your paper before submitting it. I will say that's not necessarily an MLA thing. That's just like, yes, it's an academic thing. That's not an English class thing alone. But it shows respect for your ideas. Use the type of language that is expected for the class. Some assignments are going to be much more informal. You can get away with using slang. Typos might not be as much of a big deal. So be aware of what your instructor's expectations are. Whether it is submitted electronically, mode of submission, should it be emailed to them? Should it be submitted through a server that you've got? Essentially, when you have questions, ask your instructor. First, check the directions for the assignment, and then ask the instructor if it's not clear from the directions. I can tell you from experience that it's really frustrating as an instructor when a student asks me a question that is already answered in directions that I've given them. That feels really disrespectful to me. Now, if they can point out where they've looked at that in the directions and didn't understand my directions, That's actually really helpful for me because that tells me that I need to make that clear. But always check the directions first. Go back and check the syllabus and see if it's something that covers all assignments, and then check the directions for that assignment in particular. And then if it's still not clear, ask the instructor individually and send them an email, however they've asked that you contact them, talk to them individually. So now you have your paper set up. If you have any questions, again, comments down below, always welcome. And thanks so much for listening. Bye, guys.